What's up, guys, and welcome back to Bible Friends English. Today we're going to talk about phrasal verbs that we would use to describe parenting.
So there's a lot of things to talk about in terms of parenting. We're going to touch on teaching and disciplining and encouraging and the practical aspects of taking care of kids as well. But there's a lot of phrasal verbs here, both physical phrasal verbs to describe physical action, but there's also a lot of phrasal verbs to describe the intangible, like teaching and encouraging your kids. So this is going to be a good one.
Today we're going to focus on the chores of parenting, but also encouraging your children as you try to help them to do their own chores.
Yes. So let's get started. So let's start with doing the practical things, doing the actions, because that's a lot easier to grasp.
For example, the first one is get up. So we have to tell our kids that they have to get up at a certain time, or really it's to not get up too early in our case because our kids are so young.
So you can say that you get your kids up, you can say you wake them up, but we always say get up and get ready or wake up and get ready. We use them both interchangeably here.
What's important is that when you say I get the kids up, you're kind of putting the action onto something else, which is just a different way to use the same verb.
Right. Phrasal verbs, remember, grammatically speaking, you can take their object, object meaning whatever's acted upon or whatever's gotten up in this case, you can put that between the two words.
Yeah.
Whereas prepositional verbs are a little bit different in that you can never split them up. The next one is for wintertime. If you live in an area of the world where it gets really cold and chilly in the wintertime, then you need to bundle your kids up or bundle up the kids. We use bundle to mean like a bunch of something, like an armful of something, like a bundle of something, or you collect things. You might see in a digital context, you might see online, there are bundled deals where there's many versions of similar thing or one main thing and many accessories to go with it, and that's called a bundle deal. Well, we bundle our kids up by like putting a bunch of jackets and a hat and a scarf and their gloves and their boots and all that stuff. We call that bundling them up because it's basically the kid and all their accessories.
So the next one is to drop off or to pick up the kids. This is especially important for like school. We've talked about drop off and pick up before on a previous video, but this usage of drop off the kids and pick up the kids kind of has the idea that you are responsible for taking the kids from point A to point B.
Right. If you just sent the kids out the door to get on the bus and go to school themselves, or if you sent them on the train or the subway to get to their school, or they walk to school themselves, you're not dropping them off. They're taking themselves to school. We'll also say to pick up your kid when you have little kids, and you pick up the baby or you pick up the toddler, but you can't drop off the toddler. You can't just drop your kids. We would say set them down. Set down the kid. So it's physically like you're going to pick up the baby, you're going to set down the baby. But for school, you're going to pick them up from school and you're going to drop them off at school.
The next one is to pick up after yourself. So this is a chore that we might give to our kids to say, hey, if you made the mess, you pick it up. Pick up after yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So we might pick up after our kids, but we will tell them pick up after yourself.
Yeah.
Finally, at the end of the day, we bed our kids down or we tuck them into their bed.
It's the last thing we get to do. It can be one of the most satisfying things because both, one, they tend to be kind of tired and sweet, sometimes grumpy. But number two, it's a way to be with them at the end of the day, which is really good. The image is that you're taking the blankets and tucking them in means that you're actually putting the blankets underneath them so that they're all cozy and warm and snug.
This is one of those things that in American culture, not every family, but a lot of families have some bedtime traditions that they do, whether it's read a story or they pray together or they talk about their day. They talk about what we say, the happy crappy of the day. They'll say, what's the best thing today? What was the worst thing today? There's just a lot of really fun little traditions that you can do with your kids when they're really young, and maybe they carry on, maybe they don't.
And the last phrasal verb that we're going to talk about in this section is to go without.
Sometimes there's just a lot that has to happen and everything's just blowing up in the morning. There's just, the milk's gone bad. I mean, there's so much happening and you've got to get out of the door. So if the kids aren't ready, like if they don't have their hat on to go outside, then you're just going to go without.
Does it really matter that they get their shoes on before they get in the car seats? If we're just going to go into a place that they're going to take their shoes off again, nah, it's okay. They can go without.
Right. So go without is an example of a phrasal verb that you can't split up. You can't put the object between. You can end a sentence. It's like, we're just going to go without. That's okay. But you can also add the object after without to explain what you're going without.
All right, so the next section we're going to talk about is encouraging your kids. Kids need encouragement. They often don't know how the world works around them, and so a job as a parent is to say, it's okay, you're doing a good job. Even if they draw a picture and it looks really bad, you want to try to encourage that and foster that. So for example, a phrasal verb you might use is to say go on or go ahead.
Yeah, this is a way for us to encourage them to step forward into doing something. Maybe they're a bit apprehensive or they're hesitating to take the step into a new room with new classmates at school. And you can say, it's okay, go on. Go ahead. This one's very physical in imagery. It's very physical of like you're coaxing them forward. However, we can also use this for things that are a lot more intangible, like go ahead and do that, or go ahead, you can play, or go ahead and try that. Go ahead and write that out.
There's some element of that there's a barrier here and it's preventing the child, whether it's just the child's own mind or maybe it's a hurdle or there's something scary. And you're trying to say, hey, get past the hurdle, get past the barrier, then you'll see. Like if you step into the room full of new classmates, if you push past the doorway, you might actually find that you enjoy it. So try to just go ahead. It has the idea of a nice way to push a child forward.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking, it's funny because this one you cannot use in a negative way. It's so encouraging to say go on or go ahead that you can't just like yell at somebody and say like go on. Like you can say move on, like get out of here. You can do that, but you can't say go on.
Go ahead.
That doesn't work, right? It's just too encouraging. It's too uplifting of a thing. So here's one that's actually really Southern, I would say. We have something called buck up. So buck up is something is you can actually encourage somebody in a rude way. You can tell them to, hey, stop crying and buck up, which means basically like get yourself together and keep going. You don't get to stop.
Yeah. Something's already bad has happened.
Right.
And then you're trying to kind of recover from that bad thing.
Yeah, it's very cowboy culture. Like that horse kicked you off, you're hurt, you're not feeling good, buck up, get back in the saddle. We personally hear this not used in like the most encouraging of situations, but it's like when you really have a short temper or you're really annoyed at how much your kid is breaking down, or maybe your kid is complaining about really dumb things because they just don't want to do it. In that context, it's okay to say, hey, buck up. Let's do this.
The last one of saying go ahead is more like you're just kind of like gently nudging them forward, like in front of you. Buck up is kind of like the opposite. It's roughly pulling them up. Like they're on the ground, it's like buck up, and you just pull them up.
Back to really uplifting and nice ways to encourage somebody. You can say go for it. Yeah.
The idea is that there is a task, just like we were talking about before, but maybe instead of that being a scary thing, like for young kids, go for it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to do something and do something well. It's not a matter of necessarily being like really scared, but it's a matter of it's a big task or it's a difficult thing to do. And so just go for it. Like walking through a doorway is not something that's hard. It's just your mind over the matter. But go for it would be more along the lines of the idea is this is something that's going to be really hard for you.
Right. So if your kid is apprehensive about walking into their new classroom because there's just a lot of new people, it's a new school, new teachers, everything is just new and different, then you might say, go on, go ahead, you can do it. But if it's something like, hey, Mom, I'm thinking about joining the soccer team this year. Like, do you think that would be okay? Or do you think I'd be any good? Then you would say, go for it.
Yeah.
Like that would be the context in which you use go for it instead of go on or go ahead. I will say pronunciation wise, some areas of America will say something more like go for it.
Go for it. The next one is run along. And so the idea is that this person is doing something, maybe they stop for a second, or maybe they're talking to you. It can be both an encouraging thing or just meaning just continue what you were doing. So if your child comes up to you and is talking to you and you're like, oh, that's really great. I got to do some dishes. So go run along and play with your sister.
Yeah. You can also say go along, but go along also carries this connotation of follow Somebody like continue following your friend, continue following your brother, where run along is just like you're talking to one and the idea is they're going to keep going their own way, whether they're following somebody or not.
A lot of parents out there can understand this because kids are hilarious sometimes because they'll like run by and they'll say something and then they'll just run past. Like, it's like, what was that time frame there for? That was like 2 seconds of like incoherent speech. I have no idea what you were saying.
They're just connecting with you. They're making eye contact, making sure you know they're there.
And then just go.
Yeah. Well, that's where run along comes from, I think. It's just little kids acting that way. So the last one has to do more with relationship, and this is belong to. So this can be talking about relationships between people, like those kids belong to me, or it could be more like having to do with objects, like what belongs to who. So that toy belongs to your sister. So leave it alone.
Or in another way that's far deeper, if you say for a child that's struggling with just identity within the family, you could say you belong to this family. There's a lot of children that just need the comfort of saying that you are in a position that isn't going to change based on your behavior, based on your status, based on your achievement. You belong to this family, even if that means you failed that test or you didn't make the team.
Just for who you are, you belong here. So you belong to us. You will hear Americans say, like, I belong to this. So you can use it as a phrasal verb, but you can also use it as just a verb.
All right, guys, that's it for today's video. We're going to release the conversation to this video next week, so keep an eye out for that. Also keep an eye out for part 2 that's coming. So hit the subscribe button so you get those notifications so you can see them exactly when they come out.
All right, guys, that's it for us today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.